Good evening, guys. Thank you so much for coming tonight. We are Industria. My name is Teodora. This is my colleague Nino. This is our first community event for the year. Maybe you have been to others event last year. Today we are going to talk about ESG and blockchain and why blockchain loves ESG. So stay tuned. Few words about Industria. We are a technology consulting company and we work with blockchain. This is our expertise, the main expertise, and that's why we are hosting these events, and we are very happy to see you tonight and to share our knowledge, our best practices, and to hear back from our community. Okay, you're here. You have read the subject of the event, it's blockchain. So my guess is that you know the basic concepts of blockchain, because tonight we are not going to dig into the technical details of the blockchain as a technology. Rather, we are going to explore the differences between private and public blockchain. Nino is going to talk about that. And we are going to talk about ESG, basic concepts of ESG. That sounds good?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, I'll jump right into it. And I will start with few basic concepts of the ESG. And what is ESG? It stands for environmental, social, and governance. And first, before I go into any details, I would like to make a quick disclaimer. This is a topic that is so vast, so diverse, it has so many aspects that it's completely impossible to touch all of it, or even a fraction of it in a presentation like this one. That's why tonight I'm going to talk briefly about basic concepts, but if I miss something or there is something that you would like to add further, we can discuss it during the networking part. ESG is an approach that helps companies to estimate and to evaluate their environmental and social footprint as a basic definition. It has a range of activities, a wide range of goals, and all of these are interrelated and interdependent between each other. In the environmental part, it's worth mentioning some of the key activities, and those are the carbon offsetting, the carbon emissions, the water pollution, the water usage, and waste management. In the social pillar of the ESG, some of the key activities are labor standards, safety and health standards in the workplace, also human rights, inclusion, equality. In the governance pillar, we are going to mention business ethics, bribery and corruption, auditing, accounting, but also we could mention board compositions, executive compensations, among other important topics. Well, those are key activities, and companies are pledging and complying with these activities to, well, reach to some goals. ESG has many goals. The range is really wide, but we are going to mention here 4 that we are considering key to our presentation today. Those are transparency, like in broader sense, the transparency of the companies as they're presenting them in the society and the public eye. Then we have the supply chain sustainability. Supply chain, well, everything is related to the supply chain, and just last year we have seen how susceptible is the supply chain to disruptions when, for example, the war in Ukraine started. So supply chain sustainability is something that is really, really important. We are going to give a lot of details in this direction. Social responsibility, again, in the broader sense of the social responsibility of the companies to give back to the society and to give back to the community in a responsible way. And carbon offsetting and trading. This is a topic that could be Well, the opinions could be polarizing. However, this is a goal that has been proven effective for the companies that are pledging to carbon offsetting and carbon trading. Few notable examples that are worth mentioning and are related to what I've just said with the activities and goals. And the examples are from big corporations, because corporations just up until recently are not so famous of being involved in something that is not profit related. Walmart is a very interesting example. They have built a blockchain solution and they're tracking their complete supply chain. So if anything happens somewhere in the supply chain, any problem, this could be easily tracked and resolved quickly because of the technology. Microsoft is an interesting example in the social aspect of ESG. They have a huge worldwide program of hiring people with autism and people with neurodivergent employees. They have a huge program. Levi's, famous clothing brand, in the governance pillar, we're mentioning it because they have an interesting program of tracking and improving their governance and decision-making processes, but not only in the Western world, but like in the whole supply chain that goes, far east. Well, I was brief, but maybe you are thinking, if you don't know already, why companies like big corporations, Walmart is a huge corporation, Microsoft, Levi's, why these companies are going to invest in ESG activities? Because this is at least some overhead, like investment of financial investment, resources investment, additional people to work on these activities. So why? Well, it is improved stakeholder trust, to improve their stakeholders. And by stakeholders, we can think about customers, we can think about employees, we can think about investors, but also the public eye in general, the wide public. And we know these days how easily the public opinion changes to, well, very opposite directions. With improved stakeholders' trust, this means customer loyalty, employees staying in the company longer, and so on, comes improved reputation. And improved reputation for all these stakeholders groups, plus the wide public opinion. With improved reputation comes a reduction of the risk. What kind of risk? Well, all sorts of risk, legal, environmental, any liabilities, they could be reduced with by improving just the stakeholder trust. And ultimately, all of this will lead to access to capital. Investors are really looking into the ESG practices of the companies and looking when they want to decide if they're going to invest. So access to capital and at some point better financial performance for the companies. That was a brief introduction to the ESG, just to give you the context of what we are going to discover together. Now I'm going to give the stage to my colleague Nino, who's going to talk about blockchain.
Thank you, Terry, for introducing us to ESG. So now let's look into the blockchain and in particular, as we mentioned, not in blockchain in details, but differentiating public vs private. Could anyone suggest what is the difference between the first and the last network descriptions on this diagram? And I mean not color-wise, because it's obvious. Why? I mean, those are three different types of networks. This is number one, number two, number three. Any guesses? Be brave, don't be shy.
Hybrid, the last one is hybrid. Combination between public and private.
In what sense?
some part of blockchain is public, some part private.
Yeah, it's close enough. Basically, how I understand this diagram and how I can differentiate those. But yeah, good catch. But we can speak about number one as a typical public network where all the dots, they represent different peers on the network. And we can see this is a single network. We have a single ledger on the network. Every peer, every node has a copy of this ledger. So this is the biggest difference between number three, where we can say, yeah, it's our differentiating the three different private networks. But the key thing here is that they can be interoperable. They can interact between each other using distributed applications. They have different copies of the ledger. It's not a single copy. Basically, it's a network decision. Probably each node could have a separate copy of the transactions that only it should know, but we will discuss this on the later stage. So this is the biggest difference that I could mention here on this slide. On the public networks, we have a single copy of the ledger, where on the private networks, we can have multiple or different decisions for how different peers store transactions. Industry is, let's say, our expertise is working with Corda, which is a framework mainly for the purpose of building permissioned private blockchain networks. What are the benefits of building such networks, and in the context of ESG, of course? The first one is identity that we have pointed here. In order to anyone to be able to join the network, it should be aligned to a legal identity. Basically, if you want to have a node joining a network, the network, whichever it is, you should pass a KYC procedure, and this brings an extra level of security at some point. Finality is another big thing that we can, let's say, mention as a benefit, because probably you're familiar on public blockchains. In order the transaction, the block that you have committed, no worries, in order your block to be committed, there should be a number of blocks that are also executed after your ones. So it could take a while. It could be like 10, 15, up to 30, 35 transactions before your block, your transaction has a finality, which is, I mean, it's huge in time and not so optimal. While on most of the private networks, and we can speak for Corda in particular, this is not the case. Each transaction brings to finality, which is very important for any such use cases. Privacy, here probably I could come back to the slide that we were discussing. Not every node has a full copy of the ledger. There is no such kind of thing like broadcasting the transactions to all the participants in the network. Of course, this is, I mean, you should identify the use cases that this is a benefit, but for most of the ESG use cases that we'll discuss, this is definitely a benefit. So a node in a typical Corda network that we'll see how it looks like on the next slides, a node on the Corda network basically knows only about the transactions that he participates into, or only such transactions that other nodes on the network have agreed to share with this node. There is no leak of information, or the nodes don't know anything that is beyond their, let's say, permissions. And the last one is environment friendly. And we've prepared a dedicated slide for this one, just discussing about energy consumptions, different blockchains. It's a really interesting comparison of how much energy per transaction is, let's say, consumed for different blockchains. And if you can see Bitcoin, for example, this is something that I checked just today because our information was outdated. Back in the time, I remember it was like 35, but today I was amazed that it's 1,450 close to, which is like it's equal to 50 days, 50 days of a normal US family. This is a statistic that I found today. Ethereum is much less, but if you can see Corda, it's like about 200,000 times less than Bitcoin, and it's huge. That's why we can say that Corda or even Polkadot or some other let's say protocols that are meant to not Polkadot but other protocols that are meant to be developing for private blockchains are much ESG friendly. They like they fit into the ESG goals much better. And just to demonstrate how a Corda network looks like, I'm not gonna go into much details. As we mentioned, Corda is a permissioned node which has a well-known identity, and probably here we can see, I'll come here, sorry. This is the legal name of the particular node, and this is the public address where all the other nodes could find those one on the network, and this is the public key under which it's recognized by signing transactions, being involved into transactions. So we are having a very simple, very basic network between three different participants, three nodes, and the notary pool. I'll come later on the last slide of the representation. What does this notary pool takes care? So those are the three main things that we should, let's say, consider at this point, and also the vote. Vote is whenever we are transacting with different peers, we are making the transacting with different participants. As I mentioned, for example, if we participate with Titan technology, basically this is a direct communication, a peer-to-peer or a point-to-point communication between those two nodes, and they share information only on a need-to-know basis. So the only nodes on the network that will have knowledge about this transaction is those two parties, if they don't want to share explicitly with some other ones. But by finalizing the transaction, signing and committing the transactions, it goes to their votes. This is the terminology used by Corda. And vote is the place where we keep all the transactions, all the facts, all the different facts that are, let's say, attached to a particular transactions with their latest state. I mean, if a transaction says that we are owing $50 and tomorrow we do another transaction where we're returning half of it, obviously the latest state will be we are owning $25. So the vote takes care of latest version of those facts, and all the transaction chain, the transaction history is stored over there. And as I mentioned, the notary, how we reach consensus in Corda is quite different to, let's say, public blockchains. Basically, it's using the Byzantine fault tolerance consensus mechanism, and the notary is taking care. The notary is the one that verifies each transaction for double spending and reaching the consensus. This is the main goal. Of course, there are some other fine details that are not important for the topic tonight. So briefly, this is how a Corda network looks like, and yeah, now we're a little bit more familiar with blockchain, Corda as a private blockchain in particular, and ESG. I'll give the floor back to Teddy.
Thank you, Nino.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we learned the basics of the ESG, what it means, what are the key activities and goals, and why companies would invest in those activities. Nino told us about the blockchain, so why these two are so related and why they love each other. ESG actually is one of the main use cases of the blockchain. It's not like super specific to the technology. we at Industria, we have worked like in most of those use cases, and recently we have completed 2 projects that we're going to talk about. Nino is going to tell you the details. They're super interesting and amazing projects in the ESG area, but all of these like finance, trade finance, insurance, telecoms, banking, we have worked on all of that, and yes, blockchain technology has many use cases. We are not going into details right now of those, just the one capabilities that are related to the ESG. And what are those and why blockchain technology and ESG love each other? Well, you have heard me saying transparency like maybe 50 times already, but yeah, transparency is super important, and transparency is one of the blockchain capabilities that made the technology so useful for so many use cases. And transparency is one of the key goals of the ESG. So transparency in the technology plus the need of transparency for the ESG is the reason why. Okay, chain sustainability. I talked about the supply chain sustainability. Again, we have a match here for the technology and one of the key goals of the ESG. Sustainable supply chain means security, and security leads to faster resolution of problems, faster tracking of issues, and overall more sustainable environment for the supply chain in general. Then we have renewable energy trading. Blockchain has many use cases where for the development of platforms for renewable energy trading. That means that companies and individuals can trade among each other in a secure and transparent way. This leads to incentives for adoption of the renewable energy. This leads to reduction of the carbon offsetting and carbon footprint in general. We have worked in a very interesting project, 3 years ago or something. It's called Power Energy in this area, and it was about renewable energy certification. Super interesting project. We were very happy about it. We have the carbon offsetting and carbon trading. We are going to present you a specific project that we've completed in this area. Amazing project, really interesting, and the carbon offsetting is one of the key goals of the ESG, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation. And it is possible to develop secure, transparent, sustainable systems where tradable tokens can be created, and this will incentivize again the offsetting and the trading of the emissions. ESG reporting. Well, reporting in general is super important. Myself, I'm a project manager, and reporting is like one of my key activities. I know that it's a boring probably activity, but in the ESG area, reporting is as important as it could be in any other area. Because with the blockchain technology, we have a secure, immutable data, and the reporting is, well, it is what it has to be. And it is accurate, and the reports can improve the stakeholder trust and the reputation of the companies in general. To summarize all of this, I put here the social responsibility, because with all these activities, with the key goals, the companies that are pledging and trying to complete and investing in those, they are trying to give back to the society, they are trying to give back to the communities, and all of this make these companies like socially responsible for their stakeholders and for the public eye in general. With no further ado, I will give back the stage to Nino, who's going to talk about a specific projects, 2 use cases that we have worked and completed recently, and you're going to I hope, to make the connection between what we have discussed so far with the real world cases.
Thanks, Terry. Yeah, use cases are basically my favorite part in most of the presentations because they connect the dots. Basically, we've shared many facts and many interesting details about blockchain, ESG, but I don't think that we have managed to answer the question that we've placed as a heading of our presentation tonight: how and why blockchain and is changing the world, how ESG is also changing the world. In order to be more, let's say, to try to answer to this very interesting question, we bring to the light two of the projects that we recently worked that fit exactly with some of the goals set as ESG ones. The first one is Rebalance Earth. Cool name. That's the first thing I could say. Probably if someone of you have been in some of our previous presentations, have heard about it. But just to describe it briefly, we kicked off this project back on 2021. It was a small team size, like 4 or 5 people back in the time, and the very first step was to create a prototype, and in order to rebalance Earth Foundation to gain enough funds to keep going with the project to achieve the next milestones, and we are still working, obviously. It's an interesting one, and Rebalance Earth Foundation that we are partnering with are doing a great job. And the idea is at some point this year, probably Q3 this year, to make the kickoff on the first locations, which are Canada, Gabon, and Liberia. What's it about? The project is using enterprise blockchain, Corda in particular. Corda has a very cool feature where you can create custom tokens, NFT tokens, fungible tokens. You can describe your customized tokens. So we are developing the so-called eco token, which is $80. I'll explain a little bit in details how these calculations, but not much because it's very complicated, how this value is figured. So this is an eco token. Basically, that is traded in the carbon offset market. Here we are speaking about a project that is ticking the box for carbon offsetting, but not only. It's also about saving the biodiversity and some of the keystone species. So, to summarize, kickoff was 2021. We successfully reached a few, let's say, milestones, and now our team is growing bigger, and we are dedicated to making a kickoff of the project later on this year. Here we have described we try to make it not so complicated, and I'll try not to stick to the diagram because I will probably lose some of the connections, but I promise I'll explain everything. This is how it looks as a technical aspect. The very first thing is that we have, let's say, an area which could be a national park. As I mentioned, Rebalance Earth have already managed agreements with the governments of Gabon, Canada, and Liberia for specific national parks and specific keystone species. And we can say about elephants and chimpanzees in particular. So here, let's imagine that we'll describe the flow for elephants in Gabon, in the rainforest in Gabon. The very first thing is that we have a limited amount of elephants. Back in 2021, I believe that it was something like 220 plus. They have names, they have cohorts. Also, there is a huge park community over there that is taking care of those keystone species. And we will mention the park rangers a couple of times while explaining how this project is meant to work, what's the flow. So elephants, they have cohorts, or we have rangers. And the idea is simple. Every day that we have a reporting that an elephant is sighted, either we receive data from the IoT device, or either a ranger is using some devices to track, or some trap cameras, or there are many tools, many different tools that could, many different ways that we can identify that animal has been sighted. And when we receive such data, we are creating the so-called eco token that is valued $80, or we can say that it's $80 to make it easy. How this value is figured? There are lots of scientists from many different countries that are involved into the project, and they have been involved actually in calculating the benefits of those keystone species to the environment many years before Rebalance even exists. So they are using their works. There are plenty of formulas, thousands of pages of formulas to calculate what is the benefit, how much it can be evaluated as, let's say, in the monetary world. And this is how it's calculated that for elephants in Gabon, for this particular rainforest, it's $80 a day. So we're creating a token that has this cost. And on the other hand, we have the companies that should buy those. Each token is a certificate. It's an offsetting certificate. We have the companies that are on the market buying those offsetting certificates. And imagine 120 plus elephants. They've been sighted for 7th of March this year. This is 125 tokens. Those companies have signed a contract for 1 million tokens with Rebalance. All those tokens are going to this particular contract. And if we multiply this by $80, this is a huge amount for a single day. Where those money will go? What is the flow? What's the idea? How blockchain and will change? I mean, how this particular platform will change the world, or the way we, let's say, the current processes. Those money are meant to be returned back to the local communities, or let's say most of them. Most is more than 90%, for example. The idea to bring back the money, the benefit to local communities, is by investing in different social projects in the area, investing in schools, investing in infrastructure, in local markets. So this will tick the boxes for equality, no poverty, quality of education, and this all fits into the ESG aspect. So this project is really interesting. We are currently on the phase of, as I mentioned, producing, let's say, the very first version that could be the kickoff at Q3 this year. Let's hope that this will be the case. But before I go to, we have another slide. Expected results. I can say what I meant in here. Here we can see some of the keystone species that are identified as a kickoff. I mentioned chimpanzees and elephants in Gabon, Canada, and Liberia. Those are, let's say, 3 of the most important goals for the project. Of course, reducing carbon is on the top of that. Protecting biodiversity, as I mentioned, and increasing the nature's resilience capabilities, but of course empowering local communities, as I have mentioned. And because I've spent, let's say, almost 2 years now with the project, I think that using blockchain is really important, because Teddy mentioned quite a few things, but I think the most important is trust in blockchain, because you know that the data cannot be manipulated. You have many security, let's say, protections to this not to happen, and all the participants on the platform, they can trust each other, and this is achievable with the blockchain. But another thing in this project is something that is more difficult, and this is changing the mindset of the people, changing the mindset of the people that live over there, not the local communities. Because, again, the scientists that provided the valuation of those tokens have calculated that if we kill an elephant and sell whatever we can from this animal, we can gain something like $20,000, plus minus, something like that. But with this change, and this is how actually it's changing, it's changing the way you are looking to this keystone species as a resource. And not only this one, probably it's changing the way how we'll treat the living resources on the world. But in order to local communities and people that live in poverty over there to understand that in the long term, in the long term, it's better for them not to kill this elephant to get this money today or tomorrow to provide food for their families. This is the most difficult aspect of this project, to change the mindset of the people over there. Yeah, and this was not related to ESG or anything else, but because Rebalance Earth is an interesting project, I thought it will be interesting to share my thought with you. And the next one is digital sandwich. From biodiversity and carbon offsetting, we're jumping to another area of ESG, which is supply chain. And as you can understand, the name is again very descriptive, digital sandwich. We're making sandwiches, but what we have here, okay, let's make a brief overview of the project. Again, a kickstart back on 2021. It's funded by Innovate UK. We're speaking about a factory, sandwich factory in UK, and all the, let's say, innovations are taking part in this particular factory. INDUSTRIA is a part of a consortium where we're trying to improve traceability, efficiency, consumer safety, and waste management. This is, let's say, the key aspects of this project. Technical aspects. We have 3 different layers. Industry is here. Those are our consortium, let's say, partners, IoT and artificial intelligence. I'll describe, let's say, maybe not so much in fine details as the previous project, but I'll try to explain, yeah, in a similar manner. We have the IoT devices as a layer where, imagine the idea is tracking all the process from the farm to the sandwich, from let's say from the pigs to the ham. This was a terminology that was very popular at the beginning of the project. And tracking all the different processes, many of those use different IoT technologies. Even for the simple thing of making sure that the temperature on the fridges where you are storing your food, they are, let's say, they are constant, and the requirements of temperature control is always constant. You have an IoT over there, and it's tracking all the time the temperature. The funny thing is that those IoT could, everything that is happening is reported to the DOT. The DOT layer is the core, is where every fact, every single action that is reported from the IoT device or from the artificial intelligence is, let's say, stored on the DOT system. And again, we speak about Corda in particular. This way, we know that it's not manipulated. Everything that really happened is over there. It's traceable, and it's visible. There is transparency. Everyone can see everything that really happened. Artificial intelligence in this project is basically, let's say, I'll mention just one aspect of the main usage. It's, let's say, to analyze user not behavior, but consumption of different sandwiches, different combinations. Of course, this factory produces many different kind of sandwiches. So it's about analyzing different seasons, which are the most, let's say, how many of those different kinds have been used in order to predict how much should be produced for the next, let's say, days, weeks, months. And this is the main reason behind this is to optimization and reducing of waste. So those are, let's say, the key technical aspects of the project that I could share. Expected results, as you can see here, we have mentioned plenty of reductions in costs for basically for the producers, better gross profit and so on. But the main idea, one of the expected, let's say, results is not only on the financial aspect of the project, but also this traceability and, as we mentioned, from the pig to the ham, from the ham to the farm to the sandwich. It's a completely different aspect. There was digital twins also mentioned that I haven't, let's say, digged into that because it's also a huge topic. But I mean, it's not only the financial part in this project that is as expected result. It's about reducing the waste on different farms, different producers. And yeah, basically those are the key aspects that I could just come up with. Right. I think I hope that those two projects were interesting to you. I'll make a short summary, probably. Yeah. What could I say? ESG is quite interesting topic as a topic. Yeah, just on time. As Teddy mentioned, and we have some experience in particular areas, but it's huge, and I hope that we can lead the discussion after the closing. We have some surprises for you. Some questions. You haven't expected that. So we can bring the discussion after the end of the presentation. There are some materials here. They're basically bottles and yeah, some cubic groups from R3 and Corda. Feel free to grab ones. And yeah, I'll be more than happy together with Teddy and the rest of INDUSTRIA team to let's say bring the discussion after the presentation. And we have some hidden let's say prizes, some t-shirts. So we've prepared a few questions. ESG is what? Anyone? Yeah.
Environment, society, and governance is a set of tool or a set of tool to evaluate industry or an area or a type of new technology to evaluate its progress or something like this. Thank you.
Yeah, that was actually really cool. A tennis moment. Yeah, thanks. Nice. Someone could name what the key goals? I think there were 4, yeah, a few of them, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
I have sustainability, supply chain, transparency.
Transparency, supply chain. Yeah, cool, nice. Nice. Corda, what what is nice. Any ideas? What's Corda? Snake, elephant? A framework. I heard a framework. Somebody mentioned a framework. What type of framework? Meant to? Yeah, framework. Framework is fine. Framework is fine. I think you said. All right. Who? Oh. Vince. Cool. Some examples of blockchain and ESG projects?
Digital sandwich.
Yeah, nice. Cool. It was the last one, wasn't it?
I did, but I can tell you one more. There's Energy Web.
Energy, cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Energy Web basically is a network which again provides traceability for sustainable energy production. So for renewable energy production and for trading of renewable energy resources, and also trading carbon certificates. Energy Web.
Energy Web, cool. So from renewable energy, producing certificates for.
Yeah, so you connect your power plant, be it a solar power plant or wind power plant, to the blockchain.
Cool.
And then once you produce a megawatt, a certain amount of carbon credits is created. Yeah, and then that's saved on the blockchain, and then it's perfectly traceable that these carbon credits are made exactly from this renewable energy source. And then you can sell it on the free market to big institutional customers or factories or companies that need these carbon credits in order to be able to keep operations going.
Cool. I asked you because Teddy mentioned that we worked on the area with Power Registry like a few years ago, but over there it was a little bit different. The idea was you have those, of course, renewable resources of energy, solar plants or whatever. But because we were partnering with some people from the States, the process is quite time demanding. I mean, it's not so easy to, and the purpose of this project was to reduce the time. Basically, most of the blockchain projects, actually, they are removing some middlemen. They are removing some pieces in the existing ecosystem, even supply chain. They are removing some of the players and making everything happens much faster. And that's why I was curious, understanding in particular for this project.
Yeah, but what he's saying actually combines two of the capabilities and the goals. So on one hand, we have the renewable energy and the producing and going to the blockchain, and then you have the carbon offsetting and the credits. It's not exactly the offsetting, but it's the carbon credits. So it combines at least two.
Yeah, cool. And this, I believe, is the last question, which is a tricky question. So digital sandwich or rebalance is better?
Rebalance Earth, sure.
Okay, cool. Actually, there's no right answer. What are right? Don't we have two?
No, we have one.
Okay, we have.
We have another one. I have.
I can.
Take yours.
Anyway, yeah. Yeah.
Who spoke, by the way? You spoke? No? I spoke? No? No?
Cool. And any other questions? Yeah, of course, we're here. We'll be more than happy to answer your questions or together have some kind of open communication. It will be amazing. I hope you liked the presentation and to have answered a few questions for ESG, what is ESG, how it fits to how let's say blockchain and ESG, how they fit together, and given the sample of a few projects, what's the idea of let's say next gen projects, how combining ESG and blockchain together, we can have a different aspects of the processes or that are currently existing, how they could be changed, or even bringing new ones that are not existing currently.
And we are going to have drinks on the other side. So everybody's welcome.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any questions now? Or? Yeah, of course.
So first of all, please tell me, do you have some kind of large projects in your company? So you mentioned the size of your teams about 7 or 8 people.
Yeah.
And what about the projects for the 50 people?
First of all, industry size is 40 people. So, yeah.
And also you mentioned the second question is related to the digital twins.
Yep.
So it's quite exciting in terms of to know more about how this can work with digital twins.
All right, cool. I'll try to answer the second one. I was not so much involved in the digital sandwich. Maybe you have sensed that I have been like, okay, digital sandwich. I know the main technical aspects, most of the answers, but not all of them. And I'll try to answer to this one as well. On the first one, big projects. Yeah, we've been involved in big projects, but I'm not sure how much I can share about those ones, because most of the time we are signing a non-disclosure agreement. But just to bring, maybe I can share that Industria on its own, we've not been, let's say, contributing really huge project that we've been building for a couple of years or 3 or 4 years. Yeah, Rebalance Earth is such kind of, but there are phases, 5-6 months. Then we have trying to reshape, let's say, have the goals for the next phase, then another phase, such kind of things. But we've been, as Terry mentioned at the beginning, we are a consultancy company. And we've been, let's say, consulting and part of really huge projects with big teams like 200 plus people, where we definitely, let's say, are playing the lead roles in some of the aspects when it comes to Corda. Our expertise is in Corda and blockchain, and in that area we've been part of big teams. I could not mention names, but yeah, we've been, and actually they fit ESG as well in many aspects. But yeah, that's my answer. Is it okay for number one?
At least domain or some
Domain, probably afterwards on a drink I can share with you. Cool. And on the second one, digital twins. With Innovate UK, Digital Sandwich is our second project. We had previously worked on a project called SweetBridge. And SweetBridge is actually one of our consortium partners. They play a key role in both of the projects. In both cases, digital twin is something that is a key part of those things. Yeah, I haven't mentioned SweetBridge, but over there, what's the idea? It's about insurance, basically, and it's really funny because we have, again, artificial intelligence over there. We have SciSteller, which are taking the photos from NASA, and they can read it with the artificial intelligence, and they can say, oh, this tree is too close to your house, you have to cut it, or otherwise your insurance is, yeah, we're not gonna take the risk of this tree staying in your. So this is something that they do with satellite images. And over there we have digital twins as well. So digital twins, probably when we speak about the building, you can imagine this building, this floor, this room, exactly as it is, with a digital representation. Everything is digitally transformed. You have the feeling that you're here. But actually today we discussed with Teddy exactly on that topic, that something that the next couple of years where it should go, and it's aiming at is imagine you have earthquake. Recently there was really we know all about the earthquake in Turkey. So the idea of digital twins is to simulate digital simulation of how such event will, let's say, what will be the impact of this particular building and this room in particular. So digital twins is a very interesting topic, and we can again speak quite a lot about that. But if you have anything else in particular, probably I could try to go for this particular question over there.
Thank you.
Cool, thanks. Good questions, thank you. Anything else?
What about the NFT market? Have you considered getting into NFTs?
NFT market? No.
This project, this is not open source project. Corda.
Corda is, well, you have enterprise and you have open source.
But you said you need a permission.
Yeah, well, enterprise, the type of the network that you are building for the peers, for the nodes, for the different players on the network is one thing. But the protocol, if it's open source or enterprise protocol, is a different story. So basically, Corda has both of them, open source and enterprise. Of course, enterprise brings some features that are really nice, but they are not the ingredient. They are not the, let's say, you are still able to operate a node. Corda is a framework. You are building decentralized applications, and those applications are installed in this node. And using those applications, nodes communicate between each other. And you can install many different applications built on Corda on a single node, and you can communicate with many different nodes. So open source gives you all that you need to build those applications, install them on a node in order for you to be able to communicate with. There is no such kind of mainnet, but it's close enough. Corda has a mainnet kind of. So you can operate a node, have an application that's written on an open source, and it can go to this mainnet, communicate with all the nodes that have the same Corda app. You can speak between each other, so there is no restriction in that. The public part, the private part comes with the KYC procedure. In order you to be able to join this node to this network, there is a strict process. Your company is checked for, let's say, there are a number of criteria that you're not on the blacklist, for example, and once you tick all the boxes, you have the green light for joining this network. This is the private part, not the open source or enterprise version of the Corda that you're using.
Okay. And do you think it's suitable for the government service?
Which service?
Like e-government, like Estonia,
Mm-hmm.
they have very developed the blockchain
Yep.
to use in their identification system. Do you think in the future the Bulgarian government will use
$1 million question.
Well, I'm not prepared for Bulgarian e-government for sure. I hope. Corda is actually a very good fit in such, let's say, use cases. Really, I mean, it's designed for such cases. Basically, the very initial idea of Corda was financial markets and fintech, interbanking. But with the time, the company realized that it fits in many different aspects. Healthcare, central bank digital currency. We had a topic back in time for this one. So central bank digital currency, Corda has been working in producing, let's say, some kind of, not some kind, but there are working solutions for how to implement central bank digital currency using Corda, and a government or let's say not a single government but EU government of many different nodes between the countries that speak common language using Corda is definitely a very good idea.
Maybe we can wrap up here, like the official part, stop the recording and go and grab a drink. I really need one.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah? Okay.
Of course.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Can I take one?
Of course, yeah, please take all of them.
Different of them.
No, they are the same.
Because the color, as you can see, it's a bit different.
You can open and choose whatever it fits. There are some switchers as well.
And where for digital twin is the blockchain? Because digital twin, the industry thing is the digital twin is okay, but how it's connected?